Did the Oklahoma Sooners get a little bit of addition by subtraction? Let's find out.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. The show is at Locked On Sooners. And tonight's top story, Jay Nunez, special teams analyst for the Oklahoma Sooners, is, according to Parker Thune and other reports, heading for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah, somebody that really came to Oklahoma and had a strong reputation about what he was going to be able to do for Oklahoma's special teams. And at times we saw that. Other times, obviously, it wasn't great across the board, special teams wise for Oklahoma. So in reality, I don't know that you're going to find a bunch of Oklahoma fans coming out of this news feeling like, hey, we just lost our best staff member or one of our top staff members. I think some Oklahoma fans are going to look at this, John, and sort of feel like, okay, well, maybe this gives us an opportunity to find the right player at special teams pulling the strings for Oklahoma. And maybe this can actually, yes, be, as the Open would say, addition by subtraction. Where do you fall on it? Again, I mean, Nunes was somebody that I think had sort of this big reputation coming in. And I don't know that I have a hard time saying we saw championship special teams play from Oklahoma.
Yeah, 2023, it was underwhelming and at times maybe even disappointing. You know, if you want to, you could go to the 5-game stretch for Zach Schmidt kicking the football, where he was 5 of 11, including the one miss against Oklahoma State, where he was 1 of 2 in a 3-point loss. He was 1 of 3 against UCF. Now, maybe that's more of a Zach Schmidt, but that kind of falls on your special teams analyst. The return game was kind of an adventure, especially on punt returns. You never knew what was going to happen back there with Gavin Freeman. Things started off really good, and then it just never seemed to get better. And actually, I felt like it got worse as the year went along. You just wanted the dude to fair catch it because you never knew what was going to happen. And I feel like the only bright spot on the season for special teams was the emergence of Luke Elzinga. But then it begged the question, why did it take so long for Luke Elzinga to be the guy? It seemed like they were trying to go in other directions, but or that Luke Elzinga really wasn't that great early in the season, but came on late. So what changed? So there's a lot of just weird special teams dynamics in 2023 that, for better or worse, kind of cost you a couple games. I think, you can't give away special teams opportunities. We saw in, 2022 where, against a good Iowa State defense, where the special teams made a big difference. The Zach Schmidt fake field goal run for a touchdown. We saw moments. The 49-0 Texas game was terrible, but on that opening possession, I believe, they had a big special teams conversion early on a fake field goal as well. So, there were opportunities for this team to have big plays and have big moments, but it never just seemed to be very cohesive. I feel like, Jalil Farouk, he had the big return against Tulsa, and then he fumbled the ball. It was that kind of his season where it was like, okay, really, really good, really, really bad, really, really good, really, really bad, average, mediocre. Luke Elzinga, all of a sudden, is our best special teams player. It just never had that consistency that you need to have if you're going to be a championship football team.
I'm with you. Kickers will make or miss kicks, and the special teams coach, if you want to lay that blame for missed kicks at their feet, then probably to some degree you could if it's operational. But I don't come away and look at Zach Schmidt's 12 of 18 mark on field goal tries in 22 or the 15 of 21 clip in 23 as the determining factor in why it was sort of unsuccessful for Oklahoma. It was all of the other items that you mentioned. The special teams inabilities to stop Texas, right? If you want to just look at the SP plus rankings, Oklahoma was 39th in 2022 across the board, all of its special teams units, and dropped all the way to 94th in 2023. So it wasn't just the missed kicks, I guess is what I'm saying. It was the collective punt return defense, kick return defense, the punting itself for Oklahoma was not great. So across the board, it just wasn't a phase that went and won football games or changed football games for Oklahoma. And I think that when you go to a league like the SEC, this can be, if you're great at it, this can at times win you a game or win you a couple of games or lose you a couple of games. So let's hope that Oklahoma finds the right name. Maybe that's an in-house name. Maybe that's an out-of-house name. And they find somebody that can come in here and turn Oklahoma's special teams unit into something that fans and the team can look at, be proud of, and say, hey, that group went and won us a football game. We didn't see that in 23.
I go back and I look at the Frank Beamer years at Virginia Tech. I mean, what was he like most proud of and getting the most out of a lot of times was the special teams units. Even, Michael Vick was great and had great success with the Hokies, but a lot of times what made or break those games in very competitive ACC and Big East was the special teams units. They were often the difference between winning and losing for Virginia Tech. And that's what Oklahoma needs. When the margin for error is so small, you got to have your third unit, that third phase of the game come through for you sometimes. The offense could have an off day. The defense can have an off day. Your special teams, it needs to be pretty steady. I will say, we did get a couple block punts out of Peyton Bowen as a true freshman. So as much as, things didn't go great, there were some moments that were really, really good for this special. Gavin Freeman had a punt return for a touchdown early in the season. And that's why the punt return adventure became so weird, is because after such a great non-conference performance for the special teams, it just really fell off the cliff. So it'll be interesting. I know Zach Alley had great success coaching special teams, but is that going to be part of his role? No, because he's going to be the defensive coordinator. He's going to have plenty on his plate, but I'll be curious to see, okay, do they continue to go with an off-field analyst, which I imagine they will, just, fill hole for hole, as opposed to creating an on-field staff member or, reallocating that to a special teams coordinator. But what they do in game, that'll be curious as well, because, okay, how do you reallocate some of those things? Does Brent Venables take on more of a coordinating role with special teams now that he's handing off the defense in total to Zach Alley? Does one of the other assistants, like a Brandon Hall or a Jay Valai, somebody else, take on more of a responsibility role with special teams? It'll be curious to find that out whenever they open up for spring ball.
Yeah, some interesting dominoes to shuffle out here for OU in terms of who they're going to hire and how they're going to do it. So this will be an interesting little nugget to follow in the weeks and days ahead here for OU. Again, on a spot of its football team that, if you're talking about, okay, how can Oklahoma continue to improve? This certainly, collectively, special teams, they've got to be much, much better.
Got to be. Oklahoma is actually in a favorable position if you ask Josh Pate going into the SEC. Just where did they land in his power ratings for the new look SEC? Let's find out here on Locked On Sooners.
Today's episode brought to us by FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you're like us, well, you're ready to park it on the couch, get ready for Super Bowl 58 and Yes, a very happy Super Bowl to you and all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit fanduel.com/locked on to sign up. That's fanduel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And again, thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Coming up in the third segment, we're going to talk about Oklahoma's new starting shortstop and some other juicy nuggets from OU Softball Media Day with Pate Gasso meeting with the media for the first time in 2024. But Josh Pate of the Late Kick Show and CBS Sports released his power ratings. Now, he is very adamant these are not power rankings. This is just his view of current and future expectations based on recruiting and stability and resources and all that jazz. But the Oklahoma Sooners came in, and I feel like in a pretty good spot, actually a little bit higher than I ranked them in the power rankings that I did for Sooners Wire. But the Sooners come in at number 5 behind Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and one LSU Tigers.
Yeah, I could see Oklahoma in front of LSU. I could see Oklahoma in front of Alabama going into next season. The others, Georgia, you're not going to put Oklahoma in front of Georgia right now. Texas, because of the Quinn Ewers decision, you're not going to put Oklahoma in front of Texas. So I could see Oklahoma as high as 3rd and 5th. Okay, they're going to be right there working against Alabama, LSU, Tennessee. I think will be in that mix as well. And who knows, maybe right a Missouri or others. Ole Miss, I think, has something to say about it too. So to me, it's Georgia. It's everybody else trying to catch Georgia, and probably Texas in its own little tier below Georgia. And then Oklahoma's right there. If you want to call them 3rd, if you want to call them 5th, 6th, 7th, I'm not going to throw a big stink about that either.
Yeah, that's kind of about where I'd be as well. You know, Georgia is in a class of their own, especially now that Nick Saban's gone. The Texas situation, obviously, yeah, they're going to be really good. I don't think Oklahoma's that far behind them. Ole Miss, obviously, is going to be a good team based on their transfer portal hauls. And then I think there's a bunch of teams. I do think, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, you could group like 5 or 6 different teams together, kind of all in that 2nd to 3rd tier. And they're the ones that are all chasing Georgia. But I do think that what we're seeing is, okay, regardless of how 2022 went, 2023 went, Oklahoma's building towards something pretty special. And a lot of it has to do with the success that they're having on the recruiting trail. We've talked about it this week. The projections for 5-star Jonah Williams and how they've landed 5-star Jackson Arnold and 5-star Adepoju Adebaware and Peyton Bowen and David Stone. And they're continually fortifying their trenches and getting themselves, quote unquote, SEC ready, especially where you got to be SEC ready. And that's offensive line, defensive line. Everything's pointing toward this team being able to go in and compete. Now, will the wins come? That's why we play the games. But they're setting themselves up to not just have success in 2024, but even have maybe more success in 2025 and be a continual competitor for an SEC title berth or championship, and be right there in the mix for the college football playoff every single year with where they're positioned right now.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about the players that Oklahoma signed, and hopefully we see some legitimate jumps and development from a number of those guys. And hopefully that coincides with a couple of true freshmen stepping in and if not entirely, throughout the course of the season, but in some significant spots, wowing us and proving that they're going to be playmakers in the here and now, and then going forward for Oklahoma. What is the difference in a power ranking versus a power rating? Is this just verbiage?
Well, I feel like he's trying to take more of an analytical, like statistical approach, similar to like SB Plus or, the Football Power Index. Like this is kind of his version of that. And so, because people always get out of shape or been out of shape during the season when he puts out his power rating and, like Alabama is ahead of Texas, even though Texas beat Alabama, kind of a thing. He's like, no, it's not about that. And he even goes into kind of the details of it. He says, I value a 3-year snapshot of the following: on-field performance, talent acquisition, stability, and resource pool. So, I mean, it is a bit surprising considering Alabama is not very stable. Yes, Kalen DeBoer is a really good head coach. He's not Nick Saban. The same could be said for if Kirby Smart left Georgia and they replaced him with Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian's a really good coach. He's not Kirby Smart. There's instability there. And you can't equate Washington's success and roll that over to Bama. Can't roll that tide over to Bama. No, he's got to restart and he's got to rebuild. Now, there's a lot of talent for him to work with because it is Alabama and not everybody left, but it's still a transition. So we'll see if Alabama is able to stay in that number 2 spot. But I mean, if you're just looking at stability, obviously Georgia's got it better than anybody. Talent acquisition, Georgia's got that better than anybody. On-field performance, Georgia's got that better than anybody. And then, yes, Texas has got the college football playoff thing, but just 2-3 years ago, they were a 5-7 team. They were losing to Kansas. Last year they were an 8-win team. Oklahoma, last year they were 6-7. They had a rebound year this year. 2 years ago, Lincoln Riley's last. Okay, they had a pretty good year. But again, there was a bit of instability that occurred that knocks them down in the rankings a little bit. Same for an LSU. They had a little bit of instability, had a bit of a down year. But for LSU, I think you could knock them a little bit because they're losing the Heisman Trophy winner, losing a projected first-round wide receiver talent, a 1,000-yard wide receiver, 1,000-yard rusher. So that's why there's so many teams that could be in the mix for that second spot in the SEC title game behind, because there is a lot of uncertainty and clarity. Even though Texas does have the stability with Quinn Ewers coming back, they lost a lot of their skill talent in Jatavian Sanders and Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. So they've got a lot to replace down there in Austin that could give Oklahoma an opportunity to make that jump and jump ahead of them in the future.
Well, and you think about the decisions that Oklahoma got in the way of defensive players primarily, right? Coming back, Billy Bowman, Danny Stutzman, Woody Washington for this group. Obviously, you're turning over the quarterback who heads to Oregon and turning it over, though, to a 5-star talented quarterback in Jackson Arnold to take the thing over. So from a production standpoint, you're losing there at quarterback, but you're gaining in terms of what the recruiting stars would say. So now that's interesting. So more of a ESPN SP Plus outlook, if you will, here from Josh Pate's power ratings. So this is not him saying, right now today, I think Oklahoma is the 5th best team personally in the SEC. That's him saying the statistical data I'm operating off of, Oklahoma's number 5, which, all things considered, 2 years into Brent Venables, sort of what we've seen so far, not all bad if that's what you're dipping your toes into the water with.
Well, I mean, they've got the 10-win season in 2023 to hang their hat on. They got the recruiting to be able to hang their hat on. So all of that is in their favor. Stability. Brent Venables isn't going anywhere. As much as anybody wants to talk about, okay, a coach could up and leave at any point in time. Nah, this is Brent Venables' job for as long as he wants it to be Brent Venables' job, as long as there's reasonable success along the way. So for that, Oklahoma's in a really, really good spot. Resources wise, Oklahoma's in a pretty good spot. Just kind of to run down real quickly the rest of these ratings. Coming in at number 6 was Ole Miss, Tennessee 7, Texas A&M 8, Auburn at 9, Mizzou at 10, Mizzou at 10, South Carolina at 11, Kentucky at 12, Florida 13, Arkansas 14, Mississippi State and the Jeff Lebbies at 15, and Vanderbilt, of course, at 16. So that's kind of how Josh Pate's power ratings view the SEC in 2024. We got one team that is in a tier above everybody. They're a tier of their own. It's the Oklahoma Sooners softball program. Pate Gasso met with the media on Monday and revealed a little interesting nugget about who their starting shortstop's going to be. Let's find out who that's going to be next on Locked On Sooners.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy? Well, it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
Big news for Locked On Sooners. Joining us weekly on the show, starting this week, is one Alex Storako. Now, Alex Storako, friend of the show, came on back in June of 2022 whenever she transferred to Oklahoma, shared her story. Highly recommend going back and watching that interview. Just such a great listen to hear about how it all came together for her to come to Norman and be a part of the 2023 national title team. But we're excited to have her expertise guiding us through the Oklahoma softball experience and just really the national happenings as well around college softball, because of her experience with Michigan and now with Oklahoma, has a really good view of the college softball landscape. So we're excited to discuss that and everything that goes on in Oklahoma's pursuit of a 4th straight national title. In that pursuit, the Sooners are having to replace arguably the best defensive shortstop of all time in Grace Lyons. Who's going to do that? Well, Pate Gasso revealed on Monday when she met with the media that it will be one T.R.A. Jennings taking over at shortstop for Grace Lyons.
Yeah, not a shock. This is what we suspected. And, oh, by the way, first of all, excited for Alex Storako. That's going to be a blast throughout this softball season. I think Oklahoma fans are going to really enjoy what she has to say over the course of the year. But, yeah, I mean, look, T.R.A. Jennings, we thought was the front runner here to shift over to shortstop, and obviously that's going to be the case. And well, what's that mean for the rest of the infield, right? What does that mean for second?
Well, according to Gasso right now, she's got a platoon of players she's looking at playing at second. Avery Hodge, Quincy Lilio, and Elena Torres will all get opportunities to play. I think they all three bring something interesting to the table. You know, Avery Hodge, she brings just elite speed to the base paths. So when she is able to get on base, that'll be huge for them. I think she's a good defensive player. We saw her in limited opportunities and she made some plays when she got a chance. Quincy Lilio, I think, is just a steady bat. You know, she hit 275, is not going to provide a ton of power, but she's just steady. She was a very kind of key bench piece for them last season. Now going to maybe get in a more expanded role. And then Elena Torres, to me, is, I would say, the favorite to be the everyday second baseman as the season goes along. But if that's the case, then you're having to figure out, okay, who's now my right fielder every single day? Well, they've got a bunch of really good freshmen that they're bringing in and have to figure out, okay, who's going to be ready to play on a regular basis, and how does that fit what we need for our lineup? So I imagine that, you know, the starting lineup's not going to be completely settled for a lot of this season, but we've got a good indication of it now. And I could imagine, you know, say, you know, if Avery Hodge is playing second, then you got Elena Torres in right. Or if it's Quincy Lilio at second, Elena Torres is in right. Torres is going to be one of your everyday players. It's just a matter of, is she at right? Is she in second? That's going to be the question. But now we have a pretty good understanding of what the lineup will look like otherwise. Kinsey Hansen at catcher, Sydney Sanders at first, and then this platoon at second, Tiare at third or at short. And then we're getting to keep Alyssa Brito at third base, who did a really, really good job there last year. And then your outfield, obviously Riley Boone in left, Jada Coleman in center, and then Elena Torres and a platoon of players in right field, I'd imagine. And then what was also interesting is that Pate Gasso expects that Nicole May will get the first start as kind of the veteran of the rotation, at least the longest tenured pitcher in the rotation. I think that's a great call. She had a great year last year. She was undefeated, had a sub-1 ERA, had a really good opponent's batting average. She threw around the strike zone. I think she gives you an opportunity to get off to a great start. But Gasso mentioned that she can go 6 deep in her rotation, which is pretty impressive for this team. Obviously with Kelly Maxwell and Kirsten Deal and Peyton Monticelli and SJ Guerin. And there was another transfer addition that I'm blanking on now.
Carly Keeney.
Carly Keeney. Thank you. They literally have a really deep set of throwers that they can go to. And it'll be really fascinating to see how Pate Gasso and Jennifer Rocha manage their pitchers to, one, get them enough work to keep them humming, and 2, not have to overdo anybody. And I think it's going to benefit Kelly Maxwell the most, to where she's not having to be out there every single night and throw 6-7 innings every single time she takes the circle.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting question for Alex Storako, which is, what were the benefits and what were the negatives of it? Because competitors, right, they want every single start and every single inning, and yet physically what it does for your body, I'm sure, is nice, right? I mean, it helps you as the long grind of a season goes along. So I'm with you. I agree that it will be beneficial for Maxwell, but probably as a competitor, there's also some challenges involved in adjusting to that when you've been the opposite your whole career.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of why we're going to have Alex Storako on, is to give us a lot of that insight to, one, being in the locker room, being, in the day to day, and then seeing how, Jennifer Rocha works and how she's going to manage this, because Oklahoma did a lot of that last year with Jordy Ball and Nicole May and Alex Storako. And I think it worked out for everybody's benefit. They were fresh when they came down the stretch. Well, now you take those 3, and obviously you had Kirsten Deal play a significant role as a kind of reliever. Well, now you expand that to 6, and man, it just looks really, really good for the Sooners pitching staff. And I mean, of course they're going to be the favorite. I mean, they're the number 1 team unanimously in every poll, Big 12, national, whatever national ranking you want to look at. They're going to be the team to beat again all year long. And it gets started this weekend in Puerto Vallarta. They're going to take on Utah Valley, Long Beach State, and then 2 top 10 matchups against Duke and Washington, which will be very exciting right off the jump. If they can get through those 2 games, they have a chance to do something pretty special with that 53 game winning streak that they're taking into the season, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, obviously history already, and just building upon it. We'll see how long this thing can go. And obviously the big pursuit of trying to, for a graduation class, win a national championship every single year is pretty remarkable. Yeah.
And Pate Gasso talked about Nicole May and Kinsey and Tiare Jennings and Jada Coleman and Riley Boone, kind of the Super 5, I think they were dubbed, and just the opportunity that they have, and that this team is kind of embracing doing something that's never been done before and going to win the 4th straight national title. So Sooner softball, once again, is going to be must-see TV every single time they're on the field, and they'll get started on Flow Softball. So if you don't have your subscription yet, you might head over there to get that going. Not a plug, not a paid advertisement here on Locked On Sooners, but you're going to be tuned in. Everybody is to see the magic happen once again in 2024. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, when we'll have Alex Storako on to help preview the 2024 Oklahoma Sooners softball softball season. He's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.